Yeah? That's right. Hello everyone, I'm Father Aaron. Welcome to
The Dungeon Minister!
So, our heroes have cleared out the kobold caves, leaving some kobolds roaming the woods free, no doubt to cause trouble. They've cleared out the caves, and they spend a few days just recuperating, relaxing, and wondering what they'll do next. What indeed? Then one night they decide they're going to go to the Copper Kettle pub for some food, maybe a drink or two, just relax. But when they get there, they see that it's busier than normal. The place is heaving, and there seems to be a lot of buzz around. What's going on? Let's go in. They go inside, and Touchberry shoves in, because he's small and he can do that, and because he's Touchberry and he would do that. He shoves his way to the front, and he sees a halfling woman. A halfling woman with a lute, playing music and singing. What on earth? Now, this idea came to me actually in church, during our candlelit church. Every Sunday night we have this really quiet, meditative liturgy where different weeks, different musicians come in and they play music. And, well, this is the idea that came to me during this because there's a member of the parish who's kind of a halfling. Now, that sounds like a bit of an insult, but it really isn't. She considers herself a hobbit. She dresses as one every Halloween and sometimes just for other occasions. So she's cool with that. At any rate, there's this halfling woman, and she's strumming away at this lute and singing beautiful songs. And for the songs, I have to say I used I took my phone and I played songs from the channel Eat, Bake, Sing. She has beautiful, beautiful English folk songs, lovely voice, lovely channel. So if you like that kind of stuff, Eat, Bake, Sing, good stuff. Anyhow, the halfling sings, and beautifully, and the whole pub is just enchanted. And this is what is causing all the buzz. This is the big entertainment. They have this young halfling woman playing this beautiful music. Well, the adventurers muscle in, and they happen to see someone leaving their table just in time, and they jump in and sit down and they listen. She finishes up her song just as the server comes over with a huge platter of food, and it's a halfling-sized meal, and plops it down on the table. And she's, oh, good, and she's about to tuck in when she sees the adventuring party and says, a friendly face, another halfling here with all these big people. And elves. Do you know any songs? I'm on my way to your kingdom to learn some of your songs. Can you teach me any songs? She invites them to share her table, so they move over and they sit down with her, and she is full of questions, asking them about their music, about their songs. And, you know, Fleetwood and Bob Johnny aren't particularly musical characters. The boys who play them are. They both play violin. But anyway, I say you probably would know a few songs, the sort of like happy birthday level of song that kind of everybody knows. You'd know a few things. So they say, well, yeah, we have a few, and she wants to hear them. She wants to hear them because, she says, I am on a quest for music. Now, she's not an adventurer. I roll her up as a sort of normal human halfling, right? Not having any particular combat skills or any of that. She is just a musician, and she's looking for music. She does have a more adventurous spirit than a lot of halflings. She's out here looking for music. She's left the Shire, right? Most of the halflings, they live in their home, and they go back and forth on, trade routes, the merchants do. But mostly they stick to home. So the fact that she's up here in Honeywood is one thing. She's looking for songs, and she's joined a caravan. She was in Kilmarnock looking for music there, learning songs there, and she heard that there was a caravan heading up to Honeywood, and she had seen on a map that that was close to the Elven realm, so she wanted to go there to go to the elves and learn Elvish songs. And how much detail did I go into about this caravan? Oh dear, I know what it's carrying. It was carrying salted fish, it was carrying fruit from very far south, and it was carrying scrap metal for the local blacksmith to reforge into various implements. Yes, I know. My name is Aaron, and I'm a lore addict. At any rate, the caravan traveled together for safety because news of the kobolds has gotten around among the merchants, and they even brought with them 3 guards, whom I also rolled up. Claster and Porto are 2nd-level fighters, and Alistair is a 4th-level thief, but he doesn't let his class be known. He acts as if he is also a fighter. They are also in the pub that night. They're sitting by themselves at a table. The merchants are there as well. This is really the only place to get a meal, a publicly served meal in the town, so here they all are. The halfling, I forgot, her name is Skytree. The halfling tells her story of traveling up here, looking for music, and then she asks Touchberry, "Well, I probably know your songs, but do you play an instrument of any kind? Do you have an instrument?" Yes, he does. The flute made of a bone. As soon as she asks, the players get very wary. They don't want this flute getting out because they know that it tells a story of a great treasure, and they don't want her running off to grab the treasure. They don't want anyone else in the pub running off to grab the treasure. But she is insistent. She wants to see this instrument. She's fascinated by all things musical. So grudgingly, and knowing that this is a story hook that the DM has prepared, Touchberry pulls out the flute. He has it actually on a chain around his neck. He pulls out the flute, it's only a little thing, and hands it to her. And she looks at it. This is made from a bone. A person bone. Wow. Creepy. And she begins to play. As she does, music fills the room, winding between and among people, writhing like smoke up to the rafters. The music fills the room more than this simple little pipe could possibly make. She's a good player. She actually has a flute in a sheath at her belt instead of a hilt sticking out at the end of a flute. She's a good player, and so the music is beautiful, and through the music, once again, they hear the singing of a voice, this time singing with the music that she's making. Now, I'm not going to sing it, because I'm not a very good singer, and I don't want this video to be the least popular video on YouTube, but this is what it sings. Speak, speak, thou fearful guest, who with thy hollow breast, still in rude armor dressed, comest to haunt me, wrapped not in eastern balms, but with thy fleshless palms, stretched as if asking alms, why dost thou haunt me? This is the poem The Skeleton in Armor by... who was it again? Thanks. Then from those cavernous eyes pale flashes seem to rise, as when the northern skies gleam in December. And like the water's flow under December's snow, came a dull voice of woe from the heart's chamber. I was a knight of old. My deeds, though manifold, no tale in song has told, no saga taught thee. Take heed that in thy verse thou dost the tale rehearse, else dread a dead man's curse. For this I sought thee. Far in the mountain land, by the wild swordsman's band, I with my steady hand did wield the falchion, and with my boots fast bound walked the stony ground that the poor whimpering hound trembled to walk on. But when I older grew, joining a chieftain's crew, many a man I slew with the marauders. Wild was the life we led, many the souls that sped, many the hearts that bled by our stern orders. Many a wassail bout wore the long winter out, often our midnight shout set the cocks crowing, as we the warrior's tale measured in cups of ale, draining the oaken pail filled to overflowing. Once, as I told with glee tales in reverie, soft eyes did gaze on me, burning yet tender. And as the white stars shine on the dark mountain pine, on that dark heart of mine fell their soft splendor. I wooed the blue-eyed maid, yielding yet half afraid, and in the forest's shade our vows were plighted. She was the chieftain's child, who captured my heart wild, and turned its fierceness mild, true love ignited. Bright in her father's hall, shields gleamed upon the wall, loud sang the minstrels all, chanting his glory. When of old Hildebrand I asked his daughter's hand, mute did the minstrels stand to hear my story. While the brown ale he quaffed, loud then the champion laughed, and as the wind gusts waft the sea foam brightly, so the loud laugh of scorn out of those lips unshorn from the deep drinking horn blew the foam lightly. Though she had sworn her oath and given me her troth, I was too low and loath, I was discarded. Her father's word had right over my dove so white, but he did leave that night her nest unguarded. In the witching hour I climbed her prison tower, and found within her bower my heart's one pleasure. Before we clambered down, before our love had flown, she gave me as my own her dowry treasure. Scarce had I turned to flee, bearing the maid with me, fairest of all was she among the swordsmen, when on the white-clad land, waving his armed hand, we saw old Hildebrand with 20 horsemen. My horse did bend and strain to flee, but all in vain, the weight of the dowry gain a burden awful. On came the fearsome troop to catch us in their swoop. The chieftain led the group with vengeance lawful. Among the arrow flurry he fell on us in fury, my love my only worry, to give her shelter. Fighting left and right, I charged into the night. The maiden cried in fright amidst the welter. I gained the higher ground, hooves behinding pound, broken by the sound of my fair love's dying wail. In my arms she died, pierced in her tender side, the arrow gashed her wide, her warmth began to fail. Hildebrand there drew short, and called to halt his court, arrested in their sport by our shared grief. I slid from off my steed and laid her in the weeds, as her corpse did bleed, the daughter of the chief. His wail of horror rose, he rent apart his clothes, and in his grieving throes he did not mark me. His soldiers, sorrow-racked, into the night I backed, and to the mountains tacked I went silently. I roamed the mountain pass in helmet and cuirass, until to the deep crevasse I stumbled on my steed. There in grief I knelt, and broken-hearted felt the death that I had dealt by lust and greed. Long there I wept and cried, wishing I had died, or swallowed my vain pride, and left the daughter. Her gold my only maid, on it my passions laid, and in those mountains stayed, wishing for self-slaughter. In spring, as snow was melting, and hail and rain down pelting, I heard a hoarse voice belting a threat of death. Hildebrand had come, fueled by wrath and rum, pounding the war drum to stop my breath. To the vale he came, I sallied to the same, to seek my vengeance claim upon the father. 'Twas his archer's bow, his soldiers struck the blow, his arrows caused the flow, her life to falter. Upon the bridge I fought the soldiers he had brought, and each I soundly caught and sent them flying. Upon the narrow bridge, the thin and deadly ridge, I did not quake nor nidge, I sent them dying. Then at the bridge stood two, a man of sallow hue, dressed in robes of blue with eyes of flaming fire. He conjured magic deep. The stones began to leap. O'er the chasm deep he served the chieftain's ire. Wrack and ruin took all. On the mountain fell a pall. I stumbled there to fall, my strength now humbling. Behind me roared the stones as I was crushed to bones. I heard the cracks and groans. The bridge was crumbling. Death took me by the hand as I struggled still to stand, to depart from out this land. Yet it was not my hour. Enraged the chieftain stood, a statue carved of wood, slowly removed his hood, his face was dark and dour. In verses sharp and cruel, a curse he did unspool. Upon this broken fool my life he claimed. No more to breathe the air, not feel the sun warmth fair, knowing no loving care, you are death maimed. No more to rob and roam, this mountain top your home, these stones your catacomb, this vale your haunting. I curse you to deathless life, no home, no child, no wife, to guard by sword and knife this bridge o'er vaunting. At his cursed word, as if the mountains heard, the valley moved and blurred, a haze upon the air. Before my hollow eyes, up, the stone it flies, and with stony cries, the bridge repair. Still was my bosom then, still as a stagnant fen. Hateful to me were men, the sunlight hateful. So in the valley here, clad in my warlike gear, now an icon of fear, undead, ungrateful. So after death I stay, to watch by night and day the fearsome mountain way into the valley land. The power of his curse, no torture could be worse. I held the maiden's purse, but not her ivory hand. The treasure gleaming still, my broken heart can't fill. I buried it deep until I find redemption. And all who pass my vale, who seek to end my tale, I shall with sword impale, with no exception. The maiden's dower secure, gold and silver pure, guarded grim and sure by curse's measure. To warriors bold and fell, I sound this clarion knell, release me from this hell, and claim the treasure. The pub is stone silent. Skytree pulls the flute away from her lips, trembling. Once I started to play, I couldn't stop. She sets it down and nervously sits. The players look at each other. Uh-oh. Everyone heard that. And in the corner, the three warriors put their heads together and quietly start whispering. No, says Touchberry, they're not going to take our treasure. We have to beat them to it. We have to kill them. No, Touchberry, we can't kill these three. They haven't done anything to us yet. They're going to steal our treasure. But they haven't yet. And it's not even our treasure. But it's my flute. Okay, granted, it's your flute. Fine. But we don't know that they're going to... Oh, yeah, they're really preparing to leave, aren't they? These three are starting to talk and plan, and they are glancing over at the party. They clearly have heard this and are going to act upon it. The party decide right then and there, we have to go, we have to beat them. Two reasons. One, they do not want these three getting to the treasure before them. Two, they now realize this is the story hook that the DM has in mind. This must be where we're going. Yeah, clearly I've planned something, so they're gonna... Anyway. So, they decide they have to get going and quick. And they say, well, they just arrived. She had, during the conversation, Skytree had said they'd only arrived an hour or two before. So their horses are still tired. They are still tired. They're not going to be able to leave until tomorrow at the earliest. Great. We have fresh horses, and we're still fresh. Let's go now, middle of the night. Okay. Before they go, however, I say, where? Where are you going to go? Well, where the skeleton says. Where? And Bob Johnny says, my vision, remember, at the pool. This must be my vision. Of course, this is his vision. This must be my vision. The horseman on the bridge, that's what I saw. And we know that it was east of where the pool is. Okay, you know it was east of where the pool is, but that's kind of vague, right? Like, over there somewhere, right? You're going to have to nail this down a little better. Well, Fofire is human, and I have her roll a wisdom check, and she makes it, and I say, you have heard of another area in the kingdom. You've heard of a valley called the Vale of the Blade, and it's where the swordsmen are, the swordsman's company. And it's a semi-autonomous area within the kingdom. They're technically a barony of the kingdom, but they're kind of held at arm's length because these are dangerous people. They're wild. You've heard stories about how violent they are, how wild their area of the kingdom is. And so they're kind of accepted into the kingdom, but not really. Okay, the Vale of the Sword. Well, where is it? She's not entirely sure, right? I mean, she grew up in Kilmarnock in a poor family. She became a thief. She's not a worldly individual, or hasn't been until recently, so she's not sure where that area is, that valley is. Well, who can we ask? Who'd know? Well, you've got the cleric, you've got Rupert, you've got Trevor, you've got the mayor. You can ask one of them. So they decide they're going to ask the cleric, which I actually thought was the least likely of the four, but the reason they chose him was that he had been an adventurer, so he might know this, but he doesn't want to adventure anymore because at one point in his history, he had attempted to turn a wraith. It had failed. He was only 4th level. It had failed, and the wraith had killed a member of his party. He felt responsible. He stopped adventuring. He was never into it to begin with. So they figure he won't want to go get the treasure. Plus, he's a cleric. He's devoted himself to the parish now. He won't go charging after our treasure. This is paranoia at a whole new level. I love it. Anyway, so they go and they ask the cleric, and yeah, he knows where it is. It's to the east of the Riverlands. Oh, we don't want to go to the Riverlands again. We're wanted there. Okay, is there any way to get there without going through the Riverlands, like the heart of the place? And he says, well, it's in the mountain range to the east side of the Riverlands. So technically, if you find the northern end of that mountain chain and then follow it south, you'll still be in the Riverlands, but you'll be on the wild border of it, and you probably won't run into many people. And if you're looking for a way in, well, you can either go all the way to the south and then up into the valley, or you can find a mountain pass. There's a mountain pass near the north. Okay, that's what we'll do. And out they go. They head for the gate, the east gate, because I asked them, do you want to take the road down to Kilmarnock and then over, or do you want to go across the prairies, do you want to cross the grasslands? Okay, the grasslands is more direct. It's slower traveling than on a road, obviously. The road does take you through the woods, where you've had some troubles recently. The centaurs are not happy with you. So horse apiece, right? They decide they're going to go the grassland route, so out the east gate they go on the road toward the Elven Kingdom, but as soon as they get past the farmlands, where they're not going to be tramping on anyone's property, they head off across the grasslands to the southeast. They don't make it far because they start in the middle of the night, and they say around midnight we want to stop. So given the time it took to collect up to visit the cleric, to collect their gear, to collect their horses, and to make some travel, they don't get real far. They don't get a huge head start, but they go and they camp. Now, what follows is, well, kind of a hex crawl, but they're not looking for anything in particular. They're just heading in a direction. Basically, south-southeast. That's what Fleetwood says. He's a Boy Scout, so he knows his compass directions. And he's got a rough idea where they're heading. There's a gap in the mountains. The mountains come down out of the north. There's a spur of them that kind of becomes hills through most of the elven realm, but then grows to mountains again. And there's a gap. Make for the Gap of Rohan! He knows that it's roughly south-southeast from there, and at any rate, once they get out into the open grasslands south of the forest, they ought to be able to see the mountains on the horizon. Fair enough. All right. So they're making in that direction. Now, what this involves is a number of random encounters. It involves me rolling a whole lot of random encounters. And most of them, to be perfectly frank, most of them aren't worth the retelling. I roll up a rock, the giant birds, eagle-like birds. They doesn't attack, though. It's not in its territory. Rocks live in mountainous areas, etc. So I know that it's out hunting, right? And they're lawful. They're not going to attack people. They would be after animals, that kind of thing. So I say, you see it, and it's circling above, the way birds of prey do. It's circling above, and they get worried. Is it hunting us? It follows you. It's sticking with you. It's not hunting them, but it wants to know what they're up to. Somewhere near midday, I roll up an animal encounter, and it rolls up a herd of animals, sort of like, deer kind of things. So I say, all right, around noon, that rock, you see it suddenly stoop, and they get ready. Is it coming to attack us? No, it hits that herd of deer that you've seen off on the horizon, and they scatter, but it comes up carrying one and bears off to the east, carrying this thing. It lives in the mountains on the edge of the elven realm. All right, so fine. On they go. At one point, the ground beneath Bob Johnny starts to ripple and rumble, and he leaps back, and out pops a giant ferret, which I knew wouldn't be much of a combat, and I know the boys don't like to kill animals who are just doing their animal thing, but it didn't matter anyway because Bob Johnny just used his ring of animal control and told it, now remember, Bob Johnny is played by a 7-year-old, told the ferret to go dig for gold and bring it up to the surface. Of course, as soon as Bob Johnny stops concentrating, the animal is released. So, they keep going on their way. They were actually settling down. They were about to have a noon meal when this happened, but he decides they'll just get back up on their horses and they'll ride a little further to be away from this thing when it inevitably is released from control. So they ride away, somewhere they're maybe 100 yards off, and the ferret's like, what am I doing? I don't even know what gold is. So, end of story there. There's also a little detail I threw in. I think it was the second night while they camped. As the sun set, they were able to see, just off in the distance, a little smudge that they recognized as Herod's burial mound, the barrow, where they had that adventure back several adventures ago. So they're really, sort of on edge about this place, and I decide to play with that, and I roll up that during Touchberry's watch, he sees suddenly flame burst up there, like a fire has been lit. And you're pretty sure it's where the barrow was. I mean, it's dark now, so you can't be sure, was it there or there or there? But you think that's where it was, and you see this bonfire leap up. Okay. That was just a little detail, no impact on the story whatsoever, just to creep them out a little bit. Most of the journey is without incident. I mean, they're on the open grassland, so if anything's coming, they can see it, right? And there's not that much out here. It's winter still. It's spring, and it should be coming to life, but it's still quite cold. Not as cold as at the depth of it. Things are beginning to loosen a little bit. I mean, the impact of this cold is still felt, but it's not going to eliminate summer or anything. It's just going to delay it and make it cooler. But at any rate, so there's not a lot of life out here, at least not that's threatening. I mean, they see herds of animals all the time, but that's not a big deal. One thing that does happen, they see in the distance figures moving that look like mounted figures, mounted people. And the first thing they think is, oh, those warriors, those guards, they're on their way. They've beaten us. How did they get ahead of us? Well, It's a long ways away, so it's hard to tell, but it doesn't look like horses. Doesn't look, they're not moving the way horses move. What are they moving like? Well, you've seen them. They appear to have seen you. They were heading in a southerly direction, and they now turn. It looks like they're coming for you. And in a little while, as they grow closer, you're able to see it's not people, it's not horses, it's orcs. Orcs riding on dire wolves. Just having fun. Anyway, this is the first time my players have met orcs. All this time, they've never met orcs. They've met goblins, gnolls, kobolds, all that kind of stuff. Never fought any orcs. In my world, and I really just decided this maybe about a month ago, the orc kingdom is to the east of Strathunwyn. In fact, the reason that the Vale of the Sword has such tough warriors in it is that the orc kingdom is just over the mountains from them. So they're the pointy end of Strathunwyn's sword in this area. That's why they're such warriors. It's why they're so tough. Okay, so they've never experienced orcs before, but here come 4 of them. And I really did roll up 4. It happens to match the party perfectly, which is good because they're coming on wolfback with spears. Well, 3 of them have spears, 1 has a sword, but it's going to be mounted combat, which is fabulous. So, in they come. We roll for initiative. We just do group initiative because with 4 on 4, I figure let's just do groups. They're going to pair up anyway, and so we're just deciding which half of the group gets initiative. They roll, I roll. They get a 1. I get a 3. Orcs go first. Crash! The 2 sides slam into each other. And by this time, the players have said they're gonna charge toward them. So the heroes are charging on horse and mule toward the orcs, and the orcs are coming at them on the wolves. Smash together. First hit. The orcs have the attack, and we start to pair off. So what I do is instead of doing all of the orcs and then all of the players, I just do 1 pair at a time, orc then player, to resolve each individual combat, because they do spread out and pair off. The leader has chosen Bob Johnny as his target, and he swings and it clatters off the armor. As he passes, Bob Johnny swings his great axe. He's on horseback, so I do give him a penalty on the swing, but it doesn't matter because he rolls a 19, so he hits as the orc is passing. He smashes him in the back. The orc has 8 hit points. He deals 7. So this orc is in bad shape. Bad shape, right? A spear-carrying orc charges at Touchberry, misses by a mile. Touchberry, as the orc goes by, he's thrust with his spear, and he's passing by. Touchberry turns and stabs up with his sword and kills it. 1 blow, dead. Orc falls off, and I have Touchberry roll a dexterity to see if that orc ends up pulling him off of his horse, because he's got his sword in him. He rolls it. No, he's able to yank the sword out in time, and on goes the wolf, the dire wolf, as the orc collapses to the ground. Another spearman charges at Fleetwood and stabs, and I roll a nat 20. Now, when we roll a nat 20, we roll 2 damage dice. We roll the damage dice twice, and then add any bonuses. Well, the orc doesn't have any bonuses, but I roll a 1d6 twice, so 2d6. He does 8 points of damage with that thrust. Fleetwood lashes out as he passes, but, that hit was bad. Fleetwood rolls like a 4. He misses. Well, naturally, he's just been stabbed by a spear. He's not going to be able to react that fast. Okay, Foefire. Foefire has a very high dexterity. A spearman comes for her as well, but she's able to twist and bend out of the way. The spear goes wide. She swings with her sword, and she nicks him. It takes a couple points of damage. Nothing huge. The 2 sides have crashed together and passed each other the way combatants do when they're fighting from horseback or, jousting, essentially. They pass by, and they're wheeling about for another attack, but the orcs are going to take a morale check because their leader is now 1 hit point from dead. Another of their warriors has been wounded and another one killed, right? What are they going to do? So I roll morale for the orcs, and they flee. They flee. They head off in a westerly direction because now they're on the west side, and so they just book it. They don't care where they're going, they just run. Well, the party is not going to let them go that easily. Oh no, no, Fleetwood casts Sleep. Now, after the initial crash, of course, everyone was in various places in different areas, so I'm trying to work out how many of them he can get in one spell. He can get 2, the wounded orc and the one who wasn't touched, and their mounts. He rolls for how many hit dice he puts down in Sleep. He gets a 15. Well, the dire wolves are 4 hit dice, the orcs are 1. Easy. All 4 of them, 2 wolves, 2 orcs, go to sleep, right there in the middle of the field. Okay. The wolf whose rider died goes charging off to the west. They don't bother with that. It's a wolf. It is a dire wolf. They really should have killed it if they could, because they're evil. But anyway, they let it go, and Bob Johnny fires magic missile at the leader. He rolls 7 for the damage. He rolls a 6 plus the 1, max damage. The thing only had 1 hit point left. Down he goes. His wolf keeps charging ahead. Okay, so now there's 2 dire wolves out there, and then 2 orcs and 2 wolves laying asleep. They have no mercy. They kill them. This means they have all 4 of the orc bodies. They do search them. There's some copper pieces. Orcs have a treasure type P individually, which is just copper. I decide I am going to throw a necklace in, just to suggest some violence. In the past, the leader was wearing a silver necklace that was clearly of elf design. I decided they had set upon some elves and killed them, and he'd stolen this necklace from one of the women. That's where they were coming from on their way back down to the mountains. So, a little backstory that doesn't matter, but that's why he has this necklace around his neck. I roll for more random encounters. Nothing else happens. They reach the foothills of the mountain, and that's where we end the session. They've now reached the mountains. They simply need to skirt the mountains and find their way to the eastern road that comes into the north end of the Vale of the Sword. And once they get to that valley, what will they find? You never get a turn.